Just turned 20. So I turned 20
Ah,
on Tuesday, but I was 19 years old. Yes.
happy birthday. You're an old man
Thank you.
now. Welcome to the club, you
I
know?
appreciate it. Because, being honest with you guys and opening up, I wasn't sure if I was ever going to race cars or even professional high level national karting for that matter. And then when I moved into cars and had that great weekend, it was like, 5 years, 6 years of nonstop work where no one sees when you're working, all that rewarded. So to me, it was really, really special. And having my grandfather present as well on the same weekend was really amazing. One thing I can reveal is that I'm a finalist for the IMSA Diverse Driver Development Program and that scholarship. So, it's something to keep an eye out for. And recently, last week, I instructed for the first time in a Skip Barber driving course. CNETO underline racing. That's my Instagram.
Boa noite, galera. Eu sou F1 Black e sejam bem-vindos ao podcast Georgie's Stripping the Dipping. Hello everyone. Welcome to Georgie's Stripping the Dipping podcast. I'm your host, F1 Black. And this week, Georgie's lined up a birthday gift for me because after 3 years of being involved in the show, we have our very first Brazilian guest. Celso Neto moved from Brazil to the US as a child, but it was back in Brazil where he made his debut in car racing. Today, he sits second in the TCX America series after a double win at Road America. If you want the inside scoop on a fast rising star in touring car racing, then this episode's for you. So, without further ado, Celso, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Doing great, doing great. Love the pronunciation. Perfect. So
Well, I did my best. That was the high pressure, but
that
lovely to
was
have you on
great.
the show. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you
Yeah.
guys for the invite and for the opportunity. Happy to be on the show.
No, it's really lovely to have you on the show, and congratulations on your recent, I think it's a double victory at Road America. Is that right?
Yes, exactly. Thank you. Yeah, it was a great weekend for sure.
Yeah, I love that. We're starting on a really positive note, but I'd love to rewind to the very beginning. And I feel like I've got two questions because the normal question we ask is, what is your earliest motorsport memory? But when I was researching you, I found out that you've been driving since you were 5. So maybe I should be asking you, can you remember life without motorsport?
Honestly, it's honestly tough to remember anything before that. But basically, I moved to the United States when I was 4 years old. So a few months living here, I had already started racing, and that's basically where I remember everything. So for sure, I've been racing almost my entire life basically, and it's definitely something that I love doing, and I couldn't imagine my life without being involved in motorsports in some fashion.
We love talking to people in motorsport. They come from all different backgrounds, and last week's guest actually just turned up at a test, jumped in a car as a favor, and was immediately quick. Whereas lots of our guests, like yourself, start off very young. So when you were growing up, you'd moved to the US, you just started racing. Did you have any sort of motorsport heroes or idols?
I mean, like any Brazilian, Ayrton Senna for
Mm.
sure is our biggest idol. So I think that was my number one growing up. And as I got older and became more involved in following and watching, understanding motorsports, different people in the touring car side definitely inspired me. Like Felipe Fraga, that had a very big ascension from Brazil into international, prototypes and all that type of stuff. Daniel Serra, so those guys, in the more recent years, but when I first started, Senna was, is and definitely was a big inspiration for sure.
I wouldn't expect you to say any different, but yeah, I mean it's incredible the kind of icon that he still is, and we marked that sadly the 30th anniversary of his passing. When we interview guests that have grown up in America, they don't always start in karting, but am I right in thinking that's where you started racing?
Yes, I started in karting.
And what were those karts like? Was it just sort of like having fun, or was it immediately into something really competitive?
So, my parents always had the ideals that like, anything I do, it's because I want to do it and not them. So I never really had that pressure of needing to be competitive and needing to win races from the start, because I had so much of it on myself, when I was younger. But I think I became, like I say, professional in terms of wanting those results and really, really pushing in myself towards it around the, 10 year, 8, 10, 10, 11 years old mark. That's when things became serious on my end. My parents still were there to support me when I needed, but never really had any pressure. And when I was younger, that 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, it was still, professional karting, but more on the hobby side in terms of doing it for enjoyment, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And my impression is that people rarely make it, to the top of sport as where you're heading without having a true passion. So it's clearly something you're passionate about and wanted to do. And as I look at your trajectory, it looks like you're kind of hopping back and forth between series in the US and series in Brazil. It says here that you were the youngest driver to race in the Campeonato Mineiro, which is for those perhaps that don't know, a big state in Brazil, Minas Gerais. You were 14 and you had 2 races, one of which was a podium. Is that right?
Yeah, that was right. So, where my grandfather lives in Brazil in Minas Gerais, there's a big track, the Circuit of the Crystals, translating to English, and it's, I think, the largest track in South America in terms of size. So it's a very nice facility. And they had a weekend there with the Mineiro Championship. And my grandfather sponsored a few cars in that series. And I was there. I was a karting driver, hadn't had any experience, and one of the drivers wasn't able to race. So I hopped into that first weekend, rushed to get my license. It was a crazy process, honestly. And it came out the day of the first days of the event. So I did the practice days, learned how to drive a manual car for the first time, which was, very, very challenging in the beginning. Hadn't driven a race car at all, or any car for that matter. And we hopped in, and we got, I think, a 6th or 7th place result in the class, which was pretty good. And then a few weeks later, the second round, which I got my first ever podium in cars. So it was really unexpected. And then from there, my grandfather supported me more in the cars in Brazil, because we weren't really planning on making that transition. It was just, an opportunity arose. I hopped in. We, outperformed expectations, and then almost snowballed from there into the higher levels of Turismo Nacional, the Brazilian Touring Car Championship, and so on.
I think one of the themes when we talk to drivers such as yourself is there's an element of sort of modesty or humility, because what I'm reading here is you were doing the Brazilian Touring Car Championship at the age of 16, and actually you were the youngest driver to reach the podium. I'm not trying to embarrass you, but is that true? That's incredible.
Yes, yes, yes. I think to this day as well, we're still the youngest ever to get a podium finish.
Amazing.
And it was in the pro class, so they have the two A and B classes. So we raced at the time in the A class, the pro. So it was definitely a big reward for all the hard work went into getting that. At the time, the Brazilian Touring Car Championship, it was 1.6 liter restricted engines, but of the manufacturer. So a lot of work went into developing the engines, the chassis, and everything else. Nowadays, they're all spec 2 liter engines for all the manufacturers. So it's a bit of a different challenge, but it was a lot of work with the team and myself. And as a result, I learned a lot of car preparation, which I believe was very important, and is important to my career. And I really am appreciative of the experience that I had racing there and challenging myself.
What did that feel like at such a young age? Presumably you were competing with some people that were sort of double your age on the grid.
Yeah, 100%. Honestly, it was very fulfilling. Because being honest with you guys and opening up, I wasn't sure if I was ever going to race cars or even professional high level national karting for that matter. I raced a lot of amateur things in Orlando, where I live now and where always been living in the United States. So then when I moved into national karting at an older age, that was already to myself, a huge reward of hard work. And then when I moved into cars and had that great weekend, it was like, 5 years, 6 years of nonstop work where no one sees when you're working, all that rewarded. So to me, it was really, really special. And having my grandfather present as well on the same weekend was really amazing. He lives in Brazil, so not every weekend or karting, he wasn't often able to watch the events and be there. And there wasn't really the live streams like they have nowadays with the live TV. So to have him there, be present, my family, everything else, it was very special for sure.
No, I love that. And yeah, particularly if you've grown up in the US and your grandfather's in Brazil, it's lovely to be able to share that with him. The following year, you made your debut in TCA America. You spent 2 years there, and ultimately last year, I think you finished third in the championship. Is that right? I mean, So can you describe those cars to our listeners and what that series was all about?
Yeah, so in 2021, when I moved up from the Turismo Nacional, I went into the stock series in Brazil, which is the former Stock Light, the second division before the Stock Car Pro Series. So it's, big horsepower V8 car, tubular chassis. And in the middle of that season, I got a call from an old friend that I used to race in karting with his son, and they gave me the opportunity to race in TCA America because the driver of the car that was proposing the seat for us, he had paid all the entry fees for the season, but wasn't gonna do the race anymore. So it was gonna be an empty seat with a good amount of budget paid for. Um, so it was always been my dream to race in the United States as well. So I saw that opportunity and I took it. So we didn't finish the year in the stock cars and went to finish the year in the TCA America car, which was a completely different platform. So you know, less horsepower, but a lot more electronics to learn. Big throttle delay in the Type R. Um, it's a car that was susceptible to overheating, so we had to really, really manage the engine temperature to extract the most performance. Back to a front-wheel drive car. So it was, manual H pattern gearbox when I was already driving the sequential in the stock car. So it was a lot of different variables. ABS I hadn't ever used before, any racing ABS. Um, so it was a very big change, to heavy car as well. But it was a good year. We had a half season with that program, half of 2021, which I learned a lot about the series, how racing in the U.S. Operates, which it's very different from Brazil. So I learned a lot in that manner as well. And yeah, I think it was a great experience. Learned the tracks. Every single track we went to was brand new for me. So it was always really learning, learning, learning. And then in the 2023 season, we were able to put it together. I moved into Skip Barber Racing, which was the champion at the time, the series team champion. So we had a great platform there, and I really expanded from that and all the learning that I took in from that previous half year, and resulted in our third place, which was a great year for sure.
What is it like competing against people that really know the track when you're absolutely fresh on the circuit?
Yeah, it's definitely a big challenge, and especially when you look at it from the side that the style of the tracks is very different. So when we get into the tracks like Brazil into the U.S., they're 99%, very different, except a few tracks in Brazil. They may have some similarities. So those elements here, there's a lot of old school tracks here in the U.S., like Virginia, like VAR, Sebring, with the bumps. I've never seen anything like that, with having literal holes and cracks in the track. So things like that are very unique to the American, motorsports and the tracks as a whole. So in a way, you overcome it and you learn the tracks quickly. But without a doubt, if you have experience on the track, you learn nuances that not everyone knows. You can put a tire here and a little bit quicker. You can use this curb a little more, a little less. So things like that, definitely play a role. But over time, you get used to it and you adapt. That's all you have to do. That's the key to being successful in racing, is being the best one to adapt and overcome tough situations, in my opinion.
We see that in elite motorsport, those that can adapt to the changing track conditions, let alone to different series. Speaking about different series, this season you're in the TCX. So could you tell us the difference between TC America and then you're in TCX? You're currently like running really well, second in the championship, off that double victory we talked about. So what was that step up between the series? What is it like this year?
Yeah, in a way, there's some similarities. The tire size being the same definitely helps, and somewhat things like that. But with the TCX car, it just everything happens much faster. It's around 70 horsepower boost. So it may not seem like a lot on paper, but percentage wise, when you go from 290 horsepower to 370, it's a big jump, and the car is very quick. So in tracks like Road America, we're reaching nearly 150 miles an hour, which really makes things come up quicker. Your mindset has to be, and your mentality has to be much more forward than some other cars. You have to be thinking much more ahead. Because just like any mistake happens, it happens quicker as well. So you have to be prepared to catch in and step it, and save it and everything else. But overall, I felt like the process was great. We had a testing weekend at Sonoma before the season started, and as soon as I hopped in the car, I felt very comfortable. It felt in some ways very similar to the Civic. The gearbox sequential, the brakes are much different, and everything else. But the traditional style of driving it very, how do I say it? under the limit in a way of not pushing it past the limit over driving. So it has similar tendencies of driving style, which really helped me out. But overall, it's a much more powerful car. It can brake much deeper, so it's definitely more intense in that manner, and ensures you have to stay on it to not be on the back foot.
You mentioned driving style. I mean, do you have any sort of characteristics about your driving style that are particular to you, or is it just about being adaptable? Like, how would you describe your strengths as a driver?
Yeah, so good question. Um, Over time, when I first began in karting, when I was moving up into the higher ranks of professional karting, I definitely struggled with overdriving. That was something that was one of my weaknesses of pushing too much and wanting to extract when you can extract it. So I learned a lot of that in the front wheel drive cars. It taught me a lot to drive the car to the limit, not past it. So that's one tendency I have nowadays with the high level touring cars and the tire degradation and the tire management being so important is driving the car to its limit and not over the limit. So I say being smooth and having that finesse is definitely one of my strengths nowadays. And 100% as well is the qualifying of extracting that last few tenths. That's definitely a strength of mine, and it comes a bit from my aggression. I am a bit aggressive in some situations when needed. I take a little bit extra curb when needed. I brake a little bit deeper when needed, and that translates into a good qualifying and single lap performance. And with the smoothness as well, being allowed to have a consistent pace.
It seems like you're kind of very grateful for where you've got to. You've kind of seized the opportunities as they've arisen, but you haven't necessarily pushed too hard to sort of say, "Oh, I'm the best ever." Those opportunities have come to you, and you've made the most of them. Do you have a vision for where you want to go next, or where you'd like to end up in motorsport?
Being truthfully honest, as a race car driver, my goal is to live off this. So, whether it be in a touring car, a GT car, a Formula car, any series of racing, as a race car driver, my ambition is to be able to do my passion for as long as possible. So, in all honesty, any level of professional motorsport that I can compete in for my whole life, that's the end goal. But looking, at series in the future, endurance GT racing, would definitely be a great, achievement for myself personally in series like IMSA or WEC, as well as TCR racing on high levels like the World Touring Car Championship is definitely something that I have a dream of competing in. I have a really big passion for touring car racing and the racing it promotes being so close and so hard, which I really think is, to my opinion, one of my favorite forms of motorsport. So being able to compete against the best in the world, the best factory teams in a WTCR style championship would be amazing as well.
I'm reading here that you have kind of this relationship with Skip Barber Racing School, which is incredible. And we've had Mike Ogren on the show before, who's one of the coaches there, and it sounds like a brilliant facility. Can you talk to us a little bit about that partnership that you have? Do you happen to go to Skip Barber a lot? Do you do any coaching yourself? What's that relationship?
Yeah, so I joined the Skip Barber race team uh, last season, and as a result, I did a racing school as well to learn more about the program and how it works. And I was really intrigued. I've always heard of Skip Barber and it being so big, but when I was involved myself as a student in the program, I really enjoyed it. So I did the school last season, and of course, the past 2 seasons racing on the race team. And recently, last week, I instructed for the first time in a Skip Barber driving course, together with Mike Ogren actually. So we have a great relationship. I really enjoy Skip Barber, and I'm also a karting coach for Praga, like a kart manufacturer here in the United States. So I really encourage people. If you want to move to cars, you need to find the right person and the right support system to really teach you. Because in karting, a lot of people are great drivers, but in cars, it becomes a whole nother level of managing a car and all the systems involved. It's not so direct to the point. So when you have a system like Skip Barber, you learn all the fundamentals to set you up for the future. So I really, encourage young drivers that are looking to move into cars to start through them, and I think it's a great program. I'm excited the future with them, and I think they're only gonna keep growing and expanding like they have been. So I think it's definitely a great trajectory they're gonna have.
Am I right in thinking you're 19? Is that right? 19 years old?
Just turned 20, so I turned 20
Ah,
on Tuesday, but I was 19 years old. Yes,
happy birthday. You're an old man
thank you.
now. Welcome to the club, you know.
I appreciate it.
What was your experience like being an instructor for the first time?
Yeah, so I had done a lot of coaching with professional karting, which is a lot different from when you get into a driving course, where most of the students are new or don't know much about driving dynamics or motorsports. So I think it was very cool to be able to be the first person basically to introduce them to all these intricate details of motorsport. And like I said before, it's my passion. So if I can teach people in the right manner, knowing with the experience I've gotten in my lifetime, and even though I'm young, I've experienced a lot of things, and to be able to pass that to someone was very rewarding. So I think it was a great experience, and I'm definitely looking forward to the next Skip Barber schools I teach, and as well as teaching the kids I already do with karting and professional karting. And it's awesome as well that to learn new things at Skip Barber that I can teach and bring to my program in a certain way of being able to explain things in different manners and using different words that may appeal to more audiences. So I think it was a great experience to learn and to teach.
So you talked a little bit about sort of having a passion for touring cars and wanting to make a living out of what you do. It's silly season in motorsport at the moment, and I know that sometimes it's probably not possible to reveal to the public exactly what your plans are. But do you have any thoughts or clarity about what you're going to be doing in 2025 just yet?
Definitely a lot going on behind the scenes right now and for next year. Um, One thing I can reveal is that I'm a finalist for the IMSA Diverse Driver Development Program and that scholarship. So, it's something to keep an eye out for, um, and something that can definitely have a result in my future and where I'll be racing next year. But it's at the end of the day, it's all budget dependent. So if an opportunity arises that fits into my budget or a sponsor hops on board before the season ends, it will definitely change and alter the path. But yeah, I think next year will be a great year for us, and I hope to keep pushing to finish this year out strong. And we're a long ways away from the championship, even though we're in second. But hopefully, whoever you never know. It ain't over till it's over. So we'll keep pushing and focus on this season, but definitely have some good things in the works for next year.
I love that you gave the professional racing driver answer of like, I can't confirm everything, but lots going on behind the scenes, and we'll definitely keep an eye out to see where you end up. And that's absolutely brilliant. I wonder if you have the chance, because I'm sure you're a busy guy, whether you have the chance to follow Formula One or Indy, or like, do you find yourself following other motorsports in your spare time?
100%, yeah. I follow a lot of Brazilian motorsports like Stock Car Brazil. Really enjoy that. TCA South America. I raced there early this year, so I've been following the championship. As a result, I have some friends racing in the championship. I also follow a lot in the United States, the IMSA races, so Michelin Pilot Challenge, the WeatherTech SportsCar Championship, IndyCar. I'm a big fan of IndyCar. My brother-in-law, he raced Formula E in Indy Next last season, Kiko Porto. So I've been watching Indy Next, IndyCar, all that stuff. Formula One, it's been tough to fully watch all the races, but I definitely keep up with the results and what's going on this season. But yeah, I'm an avid motorsports fan, so I'll watch any form of racing. I really enjoy watching and learning new things as well, because you're in a race, you can pick things up that you can use in your race. So I think it's very important to be watching and understanding what cars are good, what manufacturers are coming up, teams, and understanding the current field and the outlook of different series that you may be racing in the next few years.
A quick question for you, talking about all those series, and we're not going to hold you to this, but other than yourself, of course, are there any drivers you think we should keep an eye out for that are going to be the talent of the future?
Yeah, for sure. I think Kyle Collet in Indy Next is definitely going to be an IndyCar in the next few years. I think he's a very prominent figure in European motorsports in Brazil. Um, and it was his first year in the United States, so I think next year he'll be a force to be reckoned with for sure. And Kiko Porto, I think in the GT world, Kiko Porto, he went from the IndyCar ladder. He was vice champion USF Pro 2000, champion USF 2000, and hopped into the Lamborghini Super Trofeo season. Has been basically dominant this year. So I think that's definitely a force to be watched for the next years in GT racing. I think those two guys are going to be very important to keep your eye on as well.
We had Miles Rowe on the show a little while back, and the name Kiko Porto rings a bell because I think they were rivals, right? They were probably in the Indy Pro 2000 at roughly the same time. And yeah, I remember
Yes,
Kiko Porto being incredible.
main competitors was Miles and Kiko fighting for that championship. It was a great battle that year, and Miles ultimately won the championship. Great driver as well.
Absolutely. And like a question for you, because, you look at someone like Kiko Porto, or even yourself, coming up through the ranks, and you talked about IndyCar, you talked about touring car, and Kiko's looking at GT now. What is it that makes a driver kind of go off in that direction, looking at sports cars or touring cars as opposed to single seaters? Do you think it's to do with driving style? Is it some people at all? Is it funding? What are those elements that make that decision?
So I think it's a mixture of a few things. One is the appeal. So when you look at Formula car racing, certain countries have a much bigger appeal to formulas than sports cars. Like in Brazil, the Formula car route is a lot more glamorized than the GT style of racing. So when you get out of Brazil, people always want to race GT cars, whether it be in Europe or United States or even in Brazil. That's one aspect when making decisions, I think. And the other aspect, I believe, is career projection. When you look at Formula cars, it's a very very narrow funnel. People do have success, they make careers out of it, but it's a much more limited quantity versus GT cars. So if you get the top level Formula car series in the world, Super Formula, IndyCar, and Formula One. The three main, in my opinion, that I can think of right now. You have, let's say, in total, less than 100 drivers. Versus if you compare the GT grids in the world, IMSA, WEC, DTM, Stock Car Brazil, and many many others, Euro Formula, all those Open GT, all this stuff. It's talking about thousands. So I think the scale is much larger. There's more manufacturer involvement as a result because it's a cars people buy. So people look at that and it becomes appealing in that manner of more opportunities. So I think that's another aspect. But at the end of the day, I think budget is another critical aspect. Formula car racing tends to be more expensive as well, which ultimately makes the funnel even narrower for that aspect too. So yeah, I think it's a lot of factors that go into play when analyzing the differences between the two.
On that front, you talked about finding that sponsorship, and we mentioned it a little bit earlier. When we've spoken to other drivers, until I'd had those conversations, I just assumed you sort of turn up at the racetrack. Your main stress is, how can I be faster? But there's also a business side to motorsport. So, are you finding yourself having to build that skill of networking and providing value for sponsors as well as being a fast driver?
100%. I mean, honestly, I say to people all the time that being fast and being a quick driver is 30% of the game. You have so much other things involved with networking with different teams, team owners, and then you get the aspect of social media. Where you have to bring a value to your sponsors, you have to bring a value to your team, all that type of stuff. You have to be on top of it, and then you get the sponsor as a whole. Getting the money. So convincing a sponsor and showing them the value of why they should sponsor you. Because at the end of the day, if it's money, the problem, they can go on Facebook ads and they can generate 100 million views for the same amount of money that they're going to pay you. So there has to be a value of a connection, a business deal done, something that will generate revenue for them. That's at the end of the day what they look for. It's revenue generated, not just having a sticker on the car. Obviously some people will support you just to support you because they like you as a person or whatever. But the majority of big actual sponsors, it comes from that. So I find myself really understanding where I can make connections and connect different sponsors, different people to generate a return, and from that return benefit my career and myself.
Are there any sponsors that you'd like to mention? I mean, do you have any sponsors that have been with you from the beginning or that you've just made, or is it more about looking to the future?
Definitely, yeah. I'd like to mention my main title sponsor, AMED, as well as some other sponsors that have supported me from the start, like Primos Builders here in the United States, LS Interbank, Dipromed. Those four have been, my day one sponsors and been supporting me in everything I've raced in. So I really have to thank them and give them a big shout out, as well as Skip Barber Racing School for all the support they give me. But yeah, looking to the future, we're always looking for new partners and new people we can bring on board and make programs that are, like I said before, generate return for them and enjoyment as well. Because at the end of the day, you sponsoring a race car, it's another aspect is enjoying it. Tickets, being at the racetrack, networking connections. That's the fun side of it. So that's also something that we look forward to helping our partners bring out to the racetrack and enjoy it.
Absolutely, and yeah, that's the side to the sponsorship of motorsport that I'd never understood until these conversations. As you said, I had probably assumed it was just putting a sticker on the car and making it look amazing, as opposed to the hospitality and the connections that the team and the car, the driver can make for you. Thinking about people that might want to follow in your footsteps and develop a career in motorsport, or their budding race drivers, looking at your 14 years of driving a car, which is quite some period of time. Do you have any words of wisdom, any advice you'd share with them?
Yeah, I do. So honestly, a few things. One is don't make decisions on ego, because a lot of people, they want to race the coolest looking car or the most expensive thing, most expensive team in karting, whatever it may be, and they make decisions on their pride. So we all like cool looking cars. We like fast cars. We like cool looking teams, good teams, and things like that. But sometimes staying where you are in place will allow you to take 2 steps forward versus taking one forward and 10 back. So planning out your budget and your future projections and all those things when making decisions is very important, and thinking logically instead of uh, just based on momentarily thing. So I think that's one important thing. And another thing is to not rush it. A lot of people want to rush out of everything. They do 1 year, they want to jump to the next. And I obviously have done that to an extent in some situations when opportunities arose. But when needed, stay there, learn, move on. Stay there, learn, move on. If you just jump to the next step before you've completed it in a way of mastering it, learning it, you won't progress as fast as you maybe would if you had stopped and learned. So that's one thing. But yeah, I think racing as a whole is a very complex sport, intricate sport, and being a driver as well as a manager, because most people don't have managers, as well as a marketing expert, as well as a negotiator for contracts. All those things you learn in racing is very very complex. But with experience, with time, it becomes something that you start to understand more and see where more mistakes are made.
That was a high degree of philosophy and wisdom. So really appreciate that. From someone that's just turned 20, and you've got a significant amount of life experience. I mean, before we move towards the latter part of the interview, my question to you: you talked a lot about motorsport. That's what we focus on here. But I'd be really interested to understand what other passions you might have in your life, or I know you're probably extremely busy with motorsport, but off track, are there any particular things that that you particularly love to do, or just like anyone else in the world, any passions outside of motorsport?
Yeah, so a few passions and hobbies I have. I really like aviation, so I'm working on my private pilot license. It's kind of on a hiatus right now the last few months because I've been so busy with college, racing, coaching, all that stuff. But I really love aviation and everything involved. I like playing golf, so I played golf when I was younger and a high level. Competed in tournaments, and that also took a little pause because of racing and dedication that it took to stay at a high level physically, mentally, and on the track. So I love golf as well. I also really enjoy fishing. I'm from the beach in Brazil, so it's almost in my blood of enjoying seafood and all the things. So I love fishing, and my grandfather especially. Um, and yeah, I mean, I also enjoy sports. So like soccer, I'm a big soccer fan. So I love watching my team from Brazil on TV. Going to a game in Orlando when I can. I really enjoy soccer or football. Um, and yeah, I think that's most of it. My daily life consists of sports and different activities generally.
And who is your team? Is it from Salvador? What's the team you support?
So it's interesting. The team I support is actually from Recife, Recife,
Yeah, yeah,
which is
yeah,
where
yeah.
my dad is from. I was born in Salvador, but most of my family, my dad, are from Recife. So I grew up, my cousins, everyone cheering for Sport, Sport Recife. So I'm a big sports fan.
Very good. I thought somehow you were going to segue and say Flamengo, and then I just don't know how we were going to end the interview. So you did well to avoid that. But they are, for those, like, I don't know how to describe it because I'm out of date with my references, but as someone that grew up in the 90s, like, I would think of them as the Manchester United of Brazilian football. But maybe that's out
Yes.
of date now. Maybe it's like the Man City. I don't know. But there we are. No, okay, yeah. Sporting Recife is fine. I mean, not that I'm the boss, but yeah, brilliant. Uh, okay, well that's good. And you mentioned you were at college, so are you in? What are you in? Like junior? What year are you in at the moment?
Yes, so I'm a junior. Yep, I have one more year of college until I graduate. Graduate next year. I'm currently doing international business at Liberty University. So I've been working on that. It's been a good experience for sure.
Incredible, yeah. Of course, international business, and yeah, as you described, all those facets that you're going to need in your future to be a successful entity as a driver, which is brilliant. So obviously, we're going to keep our eyes peeled for you and where you pop up next year as well. I can see that your website is www.cneto.net. What are your socials? Where should we find you on social media?
Yeah, so my Instagram is at CNETO underline racing. That's my Instagram. Um, and I also have a Facebook, but most of my socials are Instagram and LinkedIn, where I update myself and everything that's going on in my life.
Oh, yeah. So Facebook is just for the uncles or the aunts and your school friends from like, well, maybe you're too young now. It's like not school
Yes,
friends. But for me, it just reminds me of people's birthdays. So that's the only thing.
exactly.
But no, we'll follow your fortunes and we wish you all the best. So congratulations on where you've got so far. And it sounds like, you're destined, you've got the determination and that kind of reflection, that desire to improve that will see you be really successful. Um, on a slightly less philosophical note, because we end each interview with a slightly silly question, but I tend to think it tells us all about the person we're talking to. So I presume, and this is probably a basic question, I presume that on occasion you let yourself have a pizza for dinner. You enjoy it.
I do. I do enjoy pizza.
Okay, good. So this is a yes no question, but we're keen to understand why. Pineapple on pizza, yes or no?
No pineapple on pizza. No pineapple.
I love that. Decisive, decisive. I love that. Any particular reason why? Is it just a strong, principled answer?
No, to me, just sweet and salty don't mix that much in my head. I know in some situations it can taste pretty good, like I don't know, French fries and ice cream. People enjoy that. It's good, I guess. But it just, to me, it doesn't flow. It doesn't flow.
Okay, well, you've heard it here first. You're on the same page as Mario Andretti, so maybe you've got more things in common as well. But that's that's brilliant. Okay, well, Celso, any final messages for our listeners before we wrap up?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank you guys once again for the interview. A lot of really good questions and a lot of good research as well. So good job with that. It was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. Hope to be back in the next few years, hopefully with more updates and more championships to talk to guys about.
Of course, and this is like our secret trick here is talk to people that are extremely, high potential that seem like they're going places, and we'll come and pester you, and we'll say, look, remember us, you must talk to us, or let us into the paddock. So congratulations, really lovely to have you guys. If you've made it this far into the episode, come and find us on all good social medias at Strip the Dip, and because you're listening to this or watching this on YouTube, drop us a comment. What did you think of this episode? And which future guests would you like us to have? But until next time, I've been F1 Blag. It's been a great pleasure. See you soon. Goodbye.